Olá, muito boa noite a todos. Sejam bem-vindos de volta ao Veganário Fest 2020. Este ano é um festival que é online e ainda bem, às vezes, a tentar contornar estas dificuldades que a pandemia está a causar a toda a gente, acabamos por criar soluções que trazem muitos benefícios e graças a isso estamos a poder criar um festival internacional. Esperemos que hoje tenham gostado das palestras que trouxemos e que tenham gostado de todo o festival desde o início, porque hoje temos à noite um convidado muito especial que representa uma força, porque ele é uma força no veganismo e muito tem contribuído para a mudança do preconceito que existe ainda relativamente ao vegetarianismo, sendo associado um movimento associado ainda à alimentação mais feminina, que não puxa carroça, onde é que vais buscar a proteína? Todas essas questões, o Patrik, com o trabalho dele, o trabalho que ele tem vindo a desenvolver enquanto atleta profissional e ativista, tem influenciado milhares de pessoas em todo o mundo. O Patrik ganhou o título, entre vários títulos, já ganhou o título de homem mais forte da Alemanha, portanto, no pódio com outros atletas cuja base de proteína é obviamente a carne, e o Patrik, sendo vegano, ganhou o título de primeiro lugar. É com certeza também o vegano mais forte do mundo. E ele vai partilhar hoje connosco um bocadinho desta sua jornada, de como utilizou esta atividade que ele pratica desportiva para ajudar os animais. Patrik, thank you so much for being here, for accepting our invitation without blinking. It's an honor to receive you here. You already were here with us in Portugal, and now it's like you are again. Give me a big hug. I'm remembering now when you took 3 of us at the same time. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember. I think that was a record for me.
And like 3 women like this. What? Easy. Another one. Everyone was so impressed. We are all so impressed with your physique, and how do you do it? Only eating vegetables? How did that change your life? How are you helping the movement and the animals with your work? So I will give you the word. Just let me thank to everyone who is watching us, maybe in other countries too. Thank you so much, because this is an international, it's not Portuguese anymore, it's an international congress. So thank you so much. Muito obrigada a todos que estão a assistir aqui na sala Zoom e que estão a assistir também em direto no Facebook. Se tiverem questões para nos colocar, entrem na sala Zoom, porque no Facebook não estamos lá para cuidar, mas encontram o link e entram. Também saber que conseguimos ter tradução simultânea. Temos connosco o Rui Silva, do Oriente no Porto, ativista de longa data e, portanto, sabe do que está a falar e é um profissional que vai ser a voz do Patrik em português. Em baixo encontram na tela um símbolozinho do mundo onde podem escolher o canal de recepção. Se escolherem português, ouvem então a tradução em simultâneo de tudo o que o Patrik disser. Patrik, I was telling people that they can hear you with Rui's voice in Portuguese, and you have the words. Thank you, Patrik.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the opportunity to speak at the online event. I would have really liked to come and visit Portugal again. I have really good memories from, I think it's 2 years ago when I came last time.
Yeah.
At least 2 years ago. And it was a great time. Unfortunately, I was, I think, only there for 2 days, but it was a great time.
A internet falhou ou é impressão minha? Renato.
Sim, mas acho que é do lado dele.
I met many people, and we have to do it now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically have the talk that I would have given live. I will give the same talk in basically in this format. I have my slides with me that I would normally show, and I can share my screen if I, once I made it work here, so that you can see the slides while I'm talking. And I'm going to try to do everything a little bit more quickly, so that we have enough time for questions and answers, because if I understand this right, we have a slot of an hour, and as quickly. If I'm quicker with.
But don't worry, Patrick, don't worry. You know, in 2 days that you were here, you didn't have time to learn that we don't respect time. We enjoy the moment. So you can take your time. Just do not rush, because when we are enjoying, we just stay. So take your time.
Good stuff. Okay, then I'm going to do that. But this is the first time that I'm doing it in this format. So I'm not sure if everything's going to be perfectly smooth, but we'll see. We'll kind of, we will roll with it. So I'm now going to try to share my screen here, which is this window. Is there something visible already?
Not yet. Yeah, it's starting.
No, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is it still visible?
Perfect. We see your screen and we see you. So perfect.
Beautiful. Awesome. So then I'm going to start. So this is just the name of the talk is 9 Years of Vegan Power, and it's actually the title of the talk is already a lie. I have to tell you. I have to be honest, because my 9th year of being vegan is going to be exactly December 1st. So technically, it is still a few weeks. But on the other hand, it is just a few weeks. So I thought instead of saying 8 point, I don't know, like 10 months or so years, I would call it 9 years. So just as a disclaimer, I don't want to lie to anyone. So basically, you can say in December, it's going to be exactly 9 years that I'm vegan. I was surprised with a lot of stuff and a lot of the experiences that I made on this journey to becoming a vegan athlete, from being vegetarian before and then years before being a meat eating athlete. So there were a lot of surprises for me, and these surprises really put me on a track where I had the feeling that I had to go out and tell people about all these different things that I learned, because I thought it could help other people. Because I myself, once I had these experiences, I thought if I had learned those lessons earlier, I would have gone vegan way earlier than I did. Like, for instance, when I went vegetarian 6 years before I went vegan, I think if I would have known then what I know now, I would have gone vegan right away and not vegetarian first. So let's just dive into it. So usually normally when I'm at an event, I always show a little video that shows basically what I do. I'm not sure. I think it's in this format it's not going to work because this is a new computer I'm using, but I also think it's not necessary to watch the video now. Yeah, it doesn't work. I was expecting this. So instead of showing the video, I'm going to just say a few words about what I do. So yeah, this this is the next slide. Ignore this nude baby for a second, and let me talk about what I do. So the sport that I compete at is called strongman. And the idea of strongman is basically to bring together a lot of athletes who are strong from different sports and find out who really is the strongest of them all. And this whole thing started in 1977 with the first edition of the World's Strongest Man. And the idea was to find out who is the world's strongest man. So the problem is, because you have athletes from different fields, different sports, you want to create something new so that none of them is going to have an advantage over the others. Like, for instance, if you have weightlifters and then you have bodybuilders and then you have powerlifters, if you would just do weightlifting, the weightlifters would win. If you would do powerlifting, the powerlifters would win. So you have to create something new so that it's a fair, level playing field for everyone. And that's when things like the truck pull and log lift and all those crazy things came to be, because it was just basically to try to create something new. So that's the sport that I'm doing. Back in 2077, it was just a TV show basically. But nowadays, and since I started doing this in the early 2000s, And at that point, it was a very established sport. There are international federations. There are national federations that do national competitions. So, so you have, it's basically an established sport at this point. Now, so the question becomes, why would you, like, a lot of people don't really understand why you would get to a point where you have this idea of, yeah, I want to, lift crazy amounts of weight and I want to do all of this to my body. Why would you do that? So in order to understand that, we have to go a little bit back in my life, and that's why you see the little nude boy there. This is me. I think I was a few weeks old or so, and this is when I started to kind of morph and develop into something that looked like a human. First, when I came to, like, when I was born, I really looked more like an animal. I had a lot of hair. The hair is still there. So I came, I was born with a lot of hair, and it stayed that way. I still have too much hair everywhere. And I was born in a very chaotic situation. So, and I was born in 2000. I was born in 1979, and that was exactly that year where and I was born in Iran, and in Iran exactly at that year there was a revolution, and a violent revolution, and there was a government overthrow, and it ended up basically with the system that they have now. So it ended up with a very authoritarian cleric state, basically a church state, if you will. It is a church state. It calls itself Islamic State. So it is clear that it's a cleric state. And at the same time, there was a war broke out with the neighboring country, Iraq. So there was a lot of, crazy stuff happening in those first years of my life. Then, when I was 4 years old, there was a car accident and I lost my father. A lot of you might have watched The Game Changers. I'm speaking about that in the film, so I'm not going to go too deep on that. But the reason I'm talking about all of this is because what it did to me as a child is it confronted me with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of chaos. And as a child, I would kind of use comic books and kind of all kinds of fantasy worlds that I could find in fiction and comics and everything that I could get my hands on. And I was trying to escape into that world. I was basically trying to escape into a fantasy world where I would imagine myself as powerful as these comic book heroes. And I would imagine that I would have the power to change things. Like, if there was violence or if there was, terrible stuff happening, I could help people, and I would be, strong enough to help. But of course, I was just a 4-year-old basically. And in this picture, this is from this picture is taken right a few weeks after we arrived in Germany when I was 7 years old, and we left Iran and came to Germany as refugees. This is basically taken in a refugee camp. And so when we left Iran, this basically just brought even more chaos into my life. So now I had to also learn a new culture, learn a new language, try to somehow basically start from scratch and find friends and so on. So that's basically the whole beginning of my life. But what happened there was I was fascinated with comic books, and I was fascinated with being strong in order to defend others and help. And that led me to start actually working out and trying to become strong as in real life, not in my fantasy world, but now I wanted to be strong in real life. and I started training when I was 14 years old. So basically my reason for, becoming a strongman and becoming a strength athlete was in the beginning because I wanted to be strong in order to, be useful if terrible things happen. This is me when I was 17 years old. So this is 3 years after I started training, and it's, I think, pretty visible that I'm training for a few years there. Yeah, I'm now, of course, a few years older than there, but I think I looked exactly the same way. I'm just joking. So yeah, so this is when I was 17 years old, and I was doing pretty well. I have to say that I found out that before I started doing strength sports, I was not particularly successful in athletics. So I was not very good at soccer or other things, but I found out that I had a talent for strength sports. So at this point I was almost, I think, already almost 100 kilos heavier. So I was doing very well in these early years, and so it went on basically until 2005. And now one thing is, being a part of this whole strength world and this world where it's important to what you eat and how you train, and everything is kind of very disciplined, and everything goes towards trying to be as good as you can in your sport. There was also a belief system that I bought into, and that belief system basically tells you that you need animal protein in order to get strong and build muscle. And I believed, and I bought into that system until about 2005. In 2005, I started to question my own, consumption of animal protein, specifically meat, for a very easy reason. If you take a look at all these pictures here, they show me with all kinds of different animals. This is Harold. Usually I talk a lot about Harold. We found Harold when he was very, very small, and it was already very late in the year. And usually hedgehogs, when it gets winter, they have to have a certain body weight, because if they don't have that, they will not be able to hibernate and survive the winter. So they basically need enough energy and body weight to survive the winter. And this, when I found him, it was already very late in the year, and it was already getting cold, and he was just like a little cookie. So he had no chance to survive the winter. So we took him in, and we had him over the whole winter. It was a lot of fun with him. We fed him basically all kinds of foods that he would eat, and he got, like, this is maybe 3 weeks into when I found him, and he's already probably 3 times the size that he had when I found him. So yeah, we had a lot of fun, and he was eating way too much. So this is Harold, and this is Jacob. Jacob was a little crow baby. Same story, basically. We found him in a very bad state, and we wanted to kind of, help him get back on track. So we had him over a few months with us, and try to just help him get into a better shape. Now, and this is Bonnie, the family dog back then. So why am I showing you? This is another one of Jacob. So why am I showing you all these different pictures? It's because it's just to show you that animals have been a part of my life, like, forever. Like, when I was a child, I was always with animals. I would go out in the wild. I would, basically, even as a very small child, I would go and collect bugs and ants and all kinds of little critters, because I was just fascinated with life, basically. So and then later on, when I was older, I started to also rescue wildlife and so on. So I always had this very natural kind of tendency to live with animals and look the and look for opportunities to interact with animals in the wild, and then also try to help them if I would find any injured animals or something like that. And while I was doing all of that, specifically, it was at the time when we had Jacob, basically, at some point, I just realized that while I was putting all this time and energy into trying to help this one bird, at the same time, if you look at all these months, I basically maybe ate 20 chickens. So I just thought, so I'm putting all this time and energy into trying to help one bird. At the same time, I'm eating a dozen of other birds. This doesn't make any sense. And of course, logically, it doesn't make sense that in the one case you're trying to help, in the other case you are eating the animals. So I was thinking about why that was the case, and I came to the realization that in the one case, when I found Jacob, I just basically saw a living being, a sentient living being in front of me suffering, and my tendency was very naturally to try to help. In the other case, when I was buying meat at a grocery store, I was just presented with a sterile product. So I would just see something that is in a package. It has no face. I don't see how it's been killed. I don't see all the terrible stuff that goes into producing this product. So I was just buying a product and not even thinking about it. Problem is, if you start thinking about that, it's, once your eyes are open, it's hard, you cannot unsee what you have seen. So I had a problem, basically. I had a problem that I had to somehow make sense out of this situation. And for me, it came down to the question that I asked myself. And the question was, would I kill the chicken myself to eat it? So if I would have to kill it myself with my own hands, would I do it or wouldn't I? And it was very easy for me to answer. It was clear I wouldn't kill the chicken myself. So I thought, well, then it's kind of dishonest that I'm, buying a product that for me to eat that product, it means somebody has to kill the animal. If I wouldn't do it, why am I paying someone to do it? So that was for me basically what sealed the deal. It was clear I had to stop eating meat. And at this point, luckily, my training wasn't that important. So when I made the decision, I was basically trying to get my A degree on evening school. I was working full time at one job. On the weekend, I was doing 2 other jobs. So I was working in 3 jobs. In the evenings, I was at evening school. I was training in between, but my training wasn't really important at that time. So when I made the decision, I was expecting my training to suffer. That didn't happen, but I was expecting that would happen, but it was no problem for me because my training wasn't that important for me at that point. And it is lucky that it was like that, because if it was in a different situation, I might have not made the same decision, and that would have been bad, because then I could have never learned that your training doesn't suffer if you stop eating meat. The exact opposite happened. So what happened is, when you eat a lot of meat, your digestive system is always under stress, because for our body to handle meat, our body is not really designed well to handle a lot of animal products overall, especially meat. So when I took away the meat and I replaced it with other protein sources, in that case, it was mainly dairy, which came with its own problems, but I'm going to speak about that in a minute. But for the moment, at that point, what it did is it basically took a lot of stress from my digestive system, and I was actually hungrier than I was before. So I felt always hungry, so I was actually eating more. I was getting heavier, and because I was training, I was getting stronger. So it just did great things for me. In the next 6 months, I basically improved my strength levels almost at 25%. So in 6 months later, after going vegetarian, I'm 25% stronger than I was before. And that is not even training on 100%. It is just training on, like, after school and work and all that stuff, just a little bit of training. after those 6 months, I actually finished my A degree and I started to study psychology. So when I started studying, what that did is I could stop working. So I stopped working at my main job, which meant that I had actually, while I was studying, I actually had more free time than while I was, let's go back, while I was still, doing the evening school. So now I had all this basically these 25% extra strength, and I had more time at my hands. So I was looking for a new opportunity to do something with my sport and maybe competitions or something. I looked up things that I was interested in as a child, and one thing that I was a huge fan of was strongman competitions. But I never considered myself to be in a position to be in those competitions, because usually in strongman you have no weight categories. So it's not like boxing where you have like a ton of weight categories, so that if you're a lighter or a smaller athlete, you are going against other smaller athletes and not against the heavyweight. In strongman, back in the day when I was a child, and when I was watching it as in my 10s and in my 20s, it was just one class, and if you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, that's your problem basically. So I never thought about going there, because naturally I'm just not that tall. So I'm just 1 meter 70, yeah, 170. So that's like basically a foot smaller than most of the really successful guys at strongman. So I never thought I could be really successful. So I never thought about doing it. But then in 2005, when all of this happened, I realized that there was a lightweight category now. So in 2005, I think they started doing lightweight competitions internationally, and there was actually a lightweight world championships chips even. So and lightweight in strongman meant up to 105 kilos. It's funny because I think in almost every other sport that's basically very heavy, but in strongman 105 kilos would be lightweight. And that was exactly the body weight that I had at that time. So I thought, well, why don't I just try and see what happens? So I went into competitions, and I was actually pretty successful. So in 2006, I did my first run, and I won the lightweights in Germany for the first time in 2007. Went to the World Championships in the lightweight category in the same year. And then in 2009, I won the lightweights again. And now the interesting thing in strongman with the weight categories is that, at least in Germany, we do it in a way that the lightweights and the heavyweights are doing the same competition. So basically, if you have your own standing in your category, but you're also competing against the bigger guys, so that you have base as a lightweight, you have two placings. You have a placing within just the lightweights. That's when I would win, and then you also have a placing within the overall field with the big guys, which is great, because what I learned is every time that I won the lightweight category, I was also fifth in the overall. So only 4 of the bigger guys were actually, stronger than I was. So in 2010, I thought, well, if I don't have to stick to this weight category with 105 kilos and I get a little bit bigger, maybe I can actually, even do well in the heavyweights. So in 2010, I tried that for the first time. And in 2010, I was runner-up champion, which means second place. So that wasn't too bad. And then in 2011, and that's where this picture is taken, I actually won the heavyweights. So I was able to basically be the strongest of all in Germany at that point. Now, at the same time, I was vegetarian. So and that was for the media, it was kind of a big thing, and there was headlines in newspapers, and I was getting a lot of interviews because nobody could understand how this guy who doesn't eat meat can be the strongest guy in the country. So everybody was shaking their head and saying, this is impossible. Why are you the strongest? And I realized that, so up to this point, I'm doing all what I'm doing, like being vegetarian, doing these in competitions. I'm doing all of this for private reasons, basically. I'm vegetarian because I think it's the right thing to do at that point. I'm doing the competitions because it's fun, and I'm not on a mission or anything, and I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just doing what I think is fun and what I think is right. But in 2011, I realized, after winning the title and getting all this media attention, I realized that all of a sudden, through the media and through reaching basically a lot of people, I was able to influence other people. So I was getting a lot of feedback from younger guys, especially, who said that it was great for them to have me on TV speaking about my reasons why I was vegetarian, because they thought the same things, but they were afraid to really express those thoughts because they were afraid that their peers would laugh at them. They were basically afraid, and they didn't want to come off as soft. And now when the strongest guy in the country says it, now if somebody would laugh at them, they would just say, well, then you got to laugh at the strongest guy in the country. So I kind of opened up an opportunity for a lot of people to express themselves without having this fear of rejection from their peer group. And when I learned that, I just learned that I was in a very powerful position. And because that was the case, I started questioning my own standards, basically. So I thought, well, if I'm a role model for other people, shouldn't I do a better job than I'm doing? Because at this point, I knew that if you want to reduce animal suffering, and that was basically what I was trying to do as a vegetarian, I knew that being vegetarian is just not enough. Because if you take a look at the dairy industry, you take a look at how eggs are produced, basically every in part of the animal industry, the animals are suffering all in all these different fields. So a milk cow is suffering just as much as the bull is suffering, who is going to be meat. So if I want to stop suffering, it's not enough to just not eat the meat. I have to stop consuming all these products, and I have to stop feeding this machine that is just running on animal exploitation. So I realized that, and I thought, well, up to this point, I'm okay with what I'm doing because I'm just doing it for myself. But now, if other people are going to take me as a role model, I just want to do it better. So I decided, and I thought, I have to go vegan, and I have to use this position to show that what I'm doing is not even possible, not only possible on a vegetarian diet, it is also possible on a vegan diet. The problem was, I was not convinced it was possible. There was no one who had done it before. So when you look at the level that I was competing at, there was no one before me on that level. I don't even know any vegetarian on that level, let alone a vegan on that level. So for me, it was really the question, if nobody has done it, is it even possible? So basically, I had three concerns. Concern number one is, and I'm calling them the three A's because of this. So concern number one is addiction. So what I mean with addiction is that giving up meat eating was very easy for me. I was never a big meat eater. I was only eating it as a protein source. So giving that up was very easy. Going vegetarian was very easy for me. But going vegan meant I would never consume milk anymore. And I was absolutely addicted to milk. So even as it started in my childhood, I don't even remember a day in my life where I didn't have several glasses of milk. And then later on, when I started to train, I was using a lot of dairy products also as a protein source, especially when I went vegetarian. And I basically replaced all the meat that I was eating before with dairy products. So, so I had really a ton of dairy products every day, and I just for you know for training for nutritional reasons, but also because I just liked it. So it was really scary for me, and I was concerned that this addiction would somehow get me to fall back to my old habits after a few weeks of trying to be vegan. So that was my one concern. And then of course that would happen basically being in the spotlight of media and everyone. So I didn't want to, you know, just make a joke out of myself trying something and then saying after 3 weeks, oh, I was not strong enough to do it. So that was concern number one. And concern number two is acid. What I mean with acid is that as long as I can think, or at least as long as I can think while I was training, I always had problems that I would have heartburn. So I always would have problems with being too acidic in terms of my digestive system. And usually when I would drink milk, that would immediately help. Now there's two reasons for that. Reason number one is any liquid that you drink is gonna just basically neutralize some of the acid in your stomach. So even if you drink water, that's gonna help because it's watering down the acid. With milk, you also have some calcium in it. Calcium is alkaline, so that also has an immediate effect, neutralizing some of the acid. What I didn't realize is that because animal proteins, and milk is an animal protein, contain a lot of sulfur-containing amino acids. That's basically 2 of the 21 amino acids have sulfur in them. And in plant proteins, you don't have as much of these sulfur-containing amino acids. In animal proteins, they're very rich. So what that does is when you drink milk, for instance, while in the beginning it helps, once the protein gets broken down, it actually does the opposite. So the sulfur-containing amino acids basically gets digested and metabolized, and as a byproduct, you get sulfuric acid. And that was actually what was causing the problem. So while I thought, you know, that I was actually, the milk was actually helping with the acid, it was actually causing it. But at this point, I didn't know. So because I've never tried without milk in my whole life, so I had no idea that the milk was actually causing the problem. So that was my concern number two. Concern number three was, as I said in the beginning, I wasn't really convinced that my athletic performance would actually stay on the same level, because you know, there was nobody who had proven it that it would work. So I thought, well, what if it's not possible? And then I want to basically prove that you can be strong as a vegan, but if I do it and I fail, I'm going to have the opposite effect, and that's, I'm going to basically do the opposite of what I want to do. And that was my main concern. So, you know, the concern number 1 and 2, okay, but concern number 3, if I fail and I prove that it's impossible, not possible as a vegan, that would be terrible. So I thought about it for a few weeks before I even talked about it with anyone. And then when I made the decision, and it just basically came down to me looking back to what I've done in my life up to this point, and I just realized that a lot of the stuff that I had achieved up to that point was stuff that I never thought would be possible, including the fact that I was at that point the strongest guy in the country. So I thought, if I was able to do all of that, I should be able to make this work. So I kind of thought, well, I should just believe in myself and just try it. And I thought about it for a few weeks, and then the first person that I told about it was my now wife. Back then she was my fiance. So I told Katie about it, and she said, I think you're completely out of your mind. You're crazy. I can see that you're vegetarian, and that's okay, but you want to only eat salad for the rest of your life. And of course, that was not what happened. As a vegan, you eat not only salad, but yeah, she had no idea what veganism is, and she just thought I'm crazy. So I thought, well, I should probably speak with my mom and tell her about it. Same reaction. My mom thought I'm completely out of my mind, and then everyone else who I talked about it thought the same thing. Basically, my whole social surrounding thought I'm going crazy, and I told them, well, just trust me. I mean, you know me, like my mom knowed me for all my whole life. So I thought, well, just trust me, and let's see what happens. So yeah, I tried it, and what did happen? I'm going to give this a few seconds. So I hope it's possible to read this. So it just basically shows me in the forest, and it says the feeling when you go vegan to get feeble and protein deficient, and you break 3 world records instead. So the athletic performance was at least okay. So here are just a few things that I won and that I did after going vegan. So I went vegan December 1st in 2011. And the next year, I won the European Championships in raw powerlifting in Finland. Then I set a keg lift world record in 2012. I set a front hold world record, and I actually broke that one in 2012, also same year. And then I set a yoke world record in 2013, and I broke that record in 2015 again. So what you can see here basically is that even like, I mean, you could say in 2012, yeah, that's maybe strength that I still had from, being vegetarian before, and the veganism didn't cause any problems there. But if you look that I was able to, in 2015, actually break my own record, you see that it just goes on. So I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger over many years. And actually the strongest I was in 2016, just before I had an injury, and then I stopped competing after 2016. But just before that injury, I had my heaviest squat, my heaviest deadlift that I, throughout my whole career. And at that point, I'm already training 23, 24 years. So that's a very long career. And usually an athlete is it's impossible for an athlete who trains more than 2 decades to actually improve on top of where they already are. It's very hard to do that because your body just has a natural limit of how much it can grow. And after 2 decades, you usually have reached your full potential. So it's not that easy to still be able to improve. And I was improving basically after going vegan for 5 full years, half a decade, and I was the strongest in 2016. So athletic performance was absolutely great. And I even think that if I would have done this way earlier in my career, like 6 years earlier when I went vegetarian, if I would have gone vegan there, I would have even been more successful as an athlete. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So that was that. Now, what happened to the addiction? So here's some good news for everyone who thinks going vegan is hard because of cheese. And that's a lot of people. Like I hear that from a lot of people, that they say, well, yeah, I don't need the meat, but I think it's going to be really hard to not have some good cheese. So the good news is here. It is, if you feel addicted to cheese, it is because it is an actual addiction. And the great thing is, like with every other addiction, if you make a clear cut, it is way easier than if you go back and forth. Like some people say, well, I'm going to reduce my cheese and just have cheese every other day or so. And then at some point I can maybe give it up. But it's like with smoking, if you just reduce it, you're keeping the problem alive, basically. But if you do a clear cut at one point, and I would always recommend to everyone who thinks it's scary to think that they won't have any cheese for the rest of their lives, just try it for 4 weeks, because for your brain, it is way less scary to think I'm gonna not have any cheese in the next 4 weeks. I guarantee you, after the 4 weeks, usually the addiction is just gone. At least for me, it was that way. So after 2 weeks, I just realized that I didn't feel the urge to have any milk anymore. So it was just gone. And I was really, really bad. Just to give you an idea, I was maybe one of the most addicted people on earth for dairy products. And to give you an idea, what I mean by that is, in my worst days, I had up to 2 gallons of milk. That's 10 liters of milk. That's very bad. And it took me 2 weeks. So everybody else should be, way easier for you to actually get off of cheese. And then the great thing is also, back when I went vegan, there was not really a lot of great vegan cheese out there. These days, there's like tons of companies everywhere in the world who produce really, really good alternative cheese products that are vegan. So if you want the taste, you can have the taste without the addiction, which is great. So what happened to the acid? Well, as I said before, the milk was actually causing the acid problem. So what happened is, after 2 days, I realized that for the first time in years, I didn't have an acid problem anymore. So that was really a big revelation. And then a lot of other great things happened. So one of those things is, while I was vegetarian, I always had an iron deficiency. And I was not even able to do anything about the iron deficiency, even with supplements. So I would even take iron supplements, and I would still be iron deficient. Now, today I know that the milk was causing that as well. So there are different things who block your iron intake, and milk products are one of those things. If you have a lot of dairy, and as I already mentioned, I had way too much dairy, it just blocks your iron intake. And then if you take supplements, that doesn't help, because if something blocks your iron intake, the supplements just don't go in. So I was iron deficient all the time. I was also having some other issues, and all of those issues just completely went away after going vegan, because the dairy wasn't there anymore, and the dairy was really causing all those problems. My recovery got way faster, so I could recover faster from trainings, which is the basis for those 5 years where I'm improving, because I can train more, I can train harder, because I'm recovering faster. And my blood pressure also went down, which is crazy, because after going vegan, I actually got heavier as well. So I was not only getting stronger, but I was also getting heavier. But while I was getting heavier, my blood pressure actually went down, which was great, because usually in strength sports, one of the big problems is that, if you have a big amount of muscle, at one point your heart is going to suffer, because your heart just can't keep up with all that muscle mass, and it has to pump blood everywhere. So a lot of bodybuilders, for instance, and a lot of other strength athletes are very they have a high risk of developing cardiovascular problems. It's like even more of a killer within that part of the population than in the general population, and it is already the #1 killer in the general population. So that's a huge thing in strength sports. And my blood pressure just went down. My resting pulse was going down. I was feeling great. So yeah, a lot of great stuff happened, and I wish I had done it way earlier. So what that did to me, oh, this is actually working. It's just it's the video doesn't show. So usually I'm showing the Toronto yoke world record here, but I think we're going to skip the videos. So what that did to me is, basically, I felt like I was at the one side, I was happy that I was having all these great experiences, and you know, I was getting rewarded for my decision to do something ethical with a lot of positive stuff that happened to my body and happened to my life, and I was, you know, getting all this back. And at the one point I was enjoying that, but in the other hand, I thought I was actually mad at myself for not having the idea and not having that decision way earlier. I just thought when I went vegetarian, I should have just went vegan back then, and it would have been so much better. So that actually motivated me to become way more outspoken after going vegan than I was as a vegetarian. So now I really started using my media opportunities and using the competitions that I was doing and using my world record attempts and using all that stuff to basically tell people and tell everyone that that you don't need animal protein in order to be strong and in order to build muscle. And I was just really trying to push that message out. And I did that in very, you know, in a lot of different ways. The world record attempts was one way, because basically, if something is a world record, you actually get way more media attention than just for a competition. I learned that very quickly. And when I learned that, I just thought, well, I can use this for my activism. So I started doing more of those things, and I just really started to do more of everything that creates noise and gives me a way to actually talk about my message, which became very quickly the center point of my whole of my whole mission. So now when I was doing the competitions, I was not really doing the competitions to win because I wanted to win. I was really doing them as a form of activism, basically. And it was, you know, a very different way to look at my career as a strength athlete from before. Because before it was just vanity, basically. You just try to win because it's great to win. But if you have a mission and you try to win because you want to change the world, basically, it is a very different feeling to be an athlete. It has a positive and a negative side. The positive side is clear. It's, you know, you have your determination is way stronger than it would be just if it was just for vanity. But it also has this negative side that it puts you under a lot of pressure. So now if you feel that you winning means that you have responsibility to actually do well as an athlete because you're trying to prove something, it also puts you under a lot of pressure. And that was actually also basically my reason to retire in 2016, because obviously, as I said before, there is a point where you reach your physical potential and there is no way to get stronger than you are at that point. And I felt like in 2016 I had actually reached that point. So I thought, well, if I'm not able to beat myself and actually show that I can even get better than I am now, there is actually nothing to prove for me. So and also, if you reach that point, basically, you know, if you like, at that point I'm well in my late 30s, and I just thought, you know, what age does to you is that at one point you're actually are going to start to decline, and I didn't want to do that while I was competing as a vegan athlete, because I knew that those people who are trying to push the opposite and who are trying to, you know, basically talk people into eating meat and having, you know, and trying to push animal protein, those people would have used a natural thing that happens when you get into your 40s and your 50s. Of course, you're not going to be as strong as in your 30s, but they would have tried to use that against my mission. So I thought, well, I'm at the pinnacle of my career, and that's the perfect point to actually stop the career and actually start doing other things. So nowadays I'm just using, you know, my media work and using all different other things I'm writing books. Right now I'm working on a comic book, and we're also working on in the background, we're actually already working on having a film. The comic book is called Earthraiser, and so I'm doing all of that other stuff in order to basically push my message. So I think at this point, I think at this point it would be a great opportunity to jump in with the questions, because I don't exactly know where we are in terms of time, but I think it's a good idea to come to the questions. So I'm now open for all questions we have.
Patrik, thank you so much. Maybe you could stop sharing your screen now.
So I'm gonna stop this, and now I'm huge.
Yeah, what an impressive story of life you have there, huh? It's impressive since you were a little boy, and it came that your dream came true. Your child dream came true. You're more than useful as you thought. Yeah, you became a real hero for the animals. So not everyone can say they realized we realized our dream from our childhood. So, well, congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yes, we have some questions, but I don't want you to go away before talking about other things that you're doing, that we know that you're doing, but for this order. First, I would like you to show your shirts. Vegan Badass, it's a brand that you have created. Vegan Badass.
So these shirts are actually one of the other ways that I'm trying to do something. Although I have to say, right now I'm not selling them anymore. So right now there is actually no opportunity to get them. Okay. But usually I sell them at veganbadass.com. And this is basically like the shortest form you can bring the message into, which is that the message is just basically that vegans are not what you think what they are, because most people think, oh, they only eat salad and broccoli and life is terrible for them. Well, that's not the case, and I'm just trying to show that there are vegans in all, they come in all sizes and shapes and
not
colors.
Masculine, that idea that is not masculine, so you just ruin that myth completely.
That's the idea, at least.
Yeah, and then I would like you to share with everyone that you also publish recipes book. Yeah,
I actually have the book.
Hey,
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's great.
Thank you.
So usually when I'm at an event, I always have the chance to actually sign books.
Your wife.
Yeah, that's Katie.
Also a vegan now for everyone to know.
Yeah, I think that's funny. So my wife and my mom, I told you about that. They thought I'm crazy. So it took my wife 6 months, and she was vegan. So after 6 weeks after I went vegan, she went vegetarian, and then after half a year, she also went vegan, and that hasn't changed since then. So she's almost also 9 years vegan now. And then with my mom, it took her, I think, a year or so. It was then at the end of the year, the next year, where I told her, so she was suffering from rheumatoid arthritis. And what I realized is that I was also having way less joint pain and inflammation in my body. So I thought, I'm going to tell this to my mom, and I just told her to try it and see what it does to her arthritis. And it was a huge help for her. So she was vegan up to that point until the end. Unfortunately, my mom died earlier this year. But she was vegan right until the end, and that was, even in the last days, I was always bringing her vegan ice cream, and she was, even in her last days, she was very happy to get vegan ice cream. So and she was doing really great. So she had lung cancer, which is connected to she was smoking for years. She gave up that when she was 40, but the lung cancer was probably connected to that. The vegan nutrition actually really helped her to lose weight, get off of her diabetes medication, get off of a lot of the rheumatoid arthritis medication. So that was a huge benefit for her, and gave her a lot more quality of life actually in all those years.
Yeah, Patrick, sorry, I know what happened, and thank you for sharing. But I just hope we don't change the mood. Let me just remind the beginning of the question, because now Katie is also your partner, because you write recipes book. And are those recipes for athletes? And
so
where can people find your books?
Yeah, so the book is also at veganbadass.com. So veganbadass.com is basically just a little online shop that I have. And usually I'm selling the t-shirts there, but right now I don't sell the t-shirts, but the books are still there. So you can get this book actually in printed, but you can also get it as an ebook, for instance, when you're somewhere in the world, and it's way cheaper, and then you can just read it on your phone or whatever. So the idea with the book was really to answer all questions that most people had, and it's basically about all the different topics that I was just talking about in my talk, but it's more in depth. So I'm not only explaining that I was having these benefits, but I'm also in the book explaining why, on a biochemical level, why it helps the body to be on a vegan diet. And then I'm also explaining how to do it right, because that's an important factor. So if you just go vegan and you don't really know a lot about nutrition, it's possible that you do mistakes. So the idea with the book was especially for people who want to not lose weight, because a lot of the people who follow me are interested in, being strong and being heavy and being, just having a lot of muscle. So for those people, and even like a lot of women who are not even interested, for instance, in strength training, they suffer from, when they go vegan, they suffer from losing weight because they just don't eat enough calories. So the idea with the book was to show easy ways to get a lot of calories. So for everyone who is interested in having a lot of fun with food, so there are recipes who are a lot of fun, but you're not going to lose weight with those recipes. You're going to definitely gain weight.
That's what I wanted you to share, because has you had your main concern when you went vegan? It's like, okay, but what if I fail? Okay, I will ruin it for the animals too. It's a responsibility, all that pressure. So it's very important to inspire people, but also to present some solutions. And I wanted people to know that they can find The Rebellion. Great book. Also, I want you to share with us, with everyone who's watching, about your experience in Game Changers. Of course, you couldn't go without talking about, because lots of people only met you there at Game Changers, where you used all your vegan power to to break through the world. And now it's on Netflix everywhere. Everyone is watching it. And I already know lots of males that are so impressive just because of that. So easy as that.
So with Game Changers, it was really the idea of James Wilkes, who is actually also narrating the story. So James had this idea in 2012, and he contacted me back then when he initially had the idea. And I was actually part of the film throughout this whole time until it was really published and last year. Now I'm really, over all these years, I've developed a great friendship with James and with Joseph, who is the other producer, Joseph Pace, behind the project. So, and for me, I was really trying to give the film everything that I had, because what I thought is that the idea of the film was exactly the same idea that I had as an athlete. So it was the film was trying to show to a big audience, to a broad audience, that it is possible to do very well as an athlete on a vegan diet. And not only is that possible, but athletes actually do it because it helps them with their sport, which is the opposite of what still the majority thinks. The majority of people think, oh, if you go vegan, you're going to have all kinds of problems. So the idea with the film was to show that the opposite is the case. And it did that by showcasing different athletes from different sports who just basically are great examples that, you know, you can do all these things. And for me, that was, the film was exactly doing what I was, it was telling the same story that I was trying to tell. So I really basically gave 100% of what I had to, you know, try to give as much content and then to do as well as possible with the film. And I think it is 100% the biggest platform that I've been a part of. So maybe 90% of people who know who I am out there just know it because of that film.
Yeah, and the name of the film was perfect. Game Changers, and it was so perfect. You're a game changer completely. Yeah, you
I
opened
identify
so
as
many
that.
doors. You're a game changer. Yeah, but now you're also Earth Raiser. Did you think you were going away before that? No, I have all check.
Yeah.
Maybe people don't know yet that you're working on this comic superhero called Earth Raiser. Tell us, it is you? Is your dream from your childhood being Earth Raiser?
Well, I didn't know back then that I would actually write a comic myself, but yeah. So when you actually are at that point where I was last year, when Game Changers, you know, is published, and how do you top that? So for me, it was really, I thought, well, this is the highest point that I've ever been. Like I had the opportunity to reach so many people with my story. What can I do next? What is my next step? And Earthraiser is basically the manifestation of something that I've been thinking about for the last 4 years. So basically, after being vegan for a few years, I started to realize that a lot of the stuff that I have done in my life was actually influenced by films and by pop culture and by ideas that like, not necessarily, it's not like I'm watching a film and then I think, oh, now I'm going to do something, but there is an idea, there is a seed, there is just a thought that is in a film, and then you take that thought and it brings you somewhere completely different. Like, for instance, the way that I am looking at animals is very different from the way most people look at animals. Like, most people have automatically this idea that as a human, I'm superior to the animals. And I stopped thinking that way very early in my life, long after I actually went vegetarian. And that came from me as a child watching the Planet of the Apes. And in the Planet of the apes are basically the superior race and humans are just like animals. So when you watch that film, it kind of shows you that our view, because the apes say the same things that we say about animals, they say that to about the humans, and you realize, oh, that's very stupid. But if you think about it and you turn it around, as a human, to think that we're superior is also stupid. So basically that was kind of also something that maybe took me to a point where then I later became vegetarian. So I realized that films have power to kind of open people's eyes, and I was trying to somehow put this message and basically the way that I see the world, was trying to put that into a film and show that to people. So I started to think about it, but every time that I was thinking about showing, basically, as soon as I would introduce a vegan hero, the story would kind of crumble, because if you introduce a vegan hero, you're basically and now if you want to reach a broad audience of non-vegans, you're giving them a main character who they cannot really connect with, because being vegan is being different. So you want to give them a character who is like them. So then I thought, well, what if you have a character who for some reason can talk with the animals? Because what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to show people what animals go through. So if you would have a character who can communicate with them, then that character can tell the people, what animals go through. Problem was, I thought, well, that's Dr. Dolittle. That story already exists. So again, I had to think about something else. Yeah. So this whole thing developed in my head for years and years. And just in the beginning of this year, after I just came back from the US, and I was in a commercial shooting, and I had to spend 2 nights in a hotel room. I couldn't sleep. So I was awake, and I was just thinking about all different stupid ideas that I have. And exactly in that night, I had basically the revelation that was, wait a second, the character doesn't have to communicate with the animals. What if the character just feels the suffering of the animals? Because the problem in this whole thing is the animals are suffering unnecessarily. So if a character has as a superpower basically that he is forced to feel all the pain that animals feel, it would force him to do the right thing. It would force him to try to help the animals because he's feeling their pain. And I thought, well, that's perfect. I can tell a superhero story, and the superpower of that superhero is basically, it is of course a curse. It is not really a, it is going to develop. It is going to develop into a power, but in the beginning, it's just a curse. He's just in all kinds of pain, and he doesn't know why. And the non-vegan movie viewer can connect with that character, because he's going to be just a normal non-vegan guy who is now put in this situation where he has all these, where he's suffering with the animals, and now he has to, develop into being a hero for the animals. And now we have a hero who is going to go to that place where I want him to go, but he's going to start in a place where everyone can connect with him. And when I had, and I wrote all of that down in that night, and I thought, this is the most powerful thing that I've ever thought about. So from that moment on, I basically spent every free minute that I had on to developing that idea. The idea was to have a film. And then I realized that, so I knew this guy who had an idea, and he wanted to actually make a Patrik comic. Basically, he wanted to make a comic about me as a superhero. And I thought, well, what if I do Earthraiser as a comic first? Because for a film you need a lot of money, and I'm not rich, so I don't have those resources. And I also thought, if I go and try to sell the idea or anything, then a big studio is going to take control of everything. So it's probably not going to be what I'm trying to make it. So I thought, what if we start the whole thing as a book, which is easier to produce? And I have this guy, David Padilla, who wants to do a comic with me anyways. So I'm going to just ask him if he would, be willing to make an Earthraiser comic. So I asked David, and he was, all in. And from that day on, we've been working hard to do it. We had a Kickstarter campaign. We got the money that we were looking for within 3 days. The whole Kickstarter thing is basically to pay David and pay our other artists that we now have. Now we have a team of 5 people. We have David, we have Alejandro Colucci, who is actually an artist from the UK, but I think right now he's in Spain. He did the cover, and then we also have a colorist, Rob Schwager, who has worked for Marvel and DC. So this is
Wow.
crazy. I'm talking about it, and
Great
I
team.
can't believe that I'm saying my story is, we have a colorist who is actually coloring David's art, who has worked for Marvel, and we have Chris Ryan, who is a friend of mine from Finland, and he's a vegan activist himself, and he is doing a lot of ghostwriting and a lot of lecturing, and he is actually editing my text basically. So I'm not a native speaker, and Ryan is Chris is just basically taking my texts and editing them to just make them better language wise. But by the end of the year, we're gonna be done with the comic. And now this is something that I haven't talked about until this point, but actually in backstage, I'm already talking with people about actually doing the film. So it turns out that when I presented the comic, actually a lot of people who have the resources to do something like this actually contacted me and told me, well, that they are interested in the actual film. And I have already sitting down with some of them, and we're already talking about how to set up a machine that is powerful enough to actually make Earthraiser as a film,
Of course.
in the next few years.
Yeah, as you can see from your own story, you don't know the future. Your future is always surprising you. So we never know where you get. I heard the rumor that you will substitute some actor. Great job. But we never know. We never know.
Yeah,
we just know that you opened a big way, a big path that we don't know where it might lead, but it's helping. It's an extraordinary help for the animals. Yeah.
Thank you.
But now we have some questions from the public.
Mhm.
If you have time, because they're in Germany, it's 1 hour plus, but it's okay. You have coffee, so
Yeah, I think we can do at least another 10 minutes or so.
Okay. So, do you know any other strongman athletes that are also vegan?
Yeah, I have a friend who actually has a vegan gym. He founded the first vegan gym here in Berlin, and that's Joni Purmonen. And Joni has actually been vegan way longer than I am, and he's also been a strongman competitor in the lightweight category. Also pretty good competitor back in the day when he was still competing. And Joni is actually nowadays, I think, vegan almost 30 years. So he's like one of the old school vegans when there were no vegans actually.
The really badass.
Yeah. He's definitely badass. He was an animal activist, also not only vegan but also an activist. He did direct action. He got actually shot at when he was liberating I think minks from a mink farm. So he's a real badass, and he's a few years older than I am, and he has all this extra life experience, and it's always great to go and train with him in the gym. It's like basically the best time for me in the week when I'm able to go and train with him. And our main thing is I think it's 10% training and 90% just talking.
That's part. But because it's also, I'm sure that it's also very rewarding for you to now you don't feel alone anymore. Because when we start opening some new way, we feel alone and we have so many doubts. So now sometimes we even forget that the world is in so bad state, because now we know so many people with whom we can share our views or train and live.
So strongman it's basically a very small community. There are not a lot of strongman athletes overall, So there are not so many vegan strongmen because just basically there are not so many strongmen.
Yeah,
But
proportional.
if you open that up to bodybuilders and fitness guys and CrossFit and powerlifting, I know a ton of athletes in all those different fields. So nowadays it's also great because we all obviously connect with each other because we're basically all fans of each other, and it's great, and I can see some people, some guys who are way younger than I am, who are going to do stuff that is way more impressive than what I did. Like, for instance, one of those guys is someone I collaborated with, Clarence Kennedy from Ireland, and he's just an absolute machine in weightlifting. And I've never done weightlifting, so in terms of weightlifting, I have absolutely nothing to go against what he does. But if you go for powerlifting, which is something that I have done, and you look at his numbers, actually my top numbers are not that far away from what he's doing already, and he's just in his early 20s. So I think Clarence, if he goes on like this for a few years, he's going to top all my like squat and deadlift numbers and so on. And then there are other athletes who are also close to those numbers, and actually way lighter than I was. So there's a lot of really impressive athletes.
Let's hope they also have a great path. Do you feel there's more acceptance in sports competition for vegan athletes now? They are not bullied anymore,
I
or
think,
less bullied.
yeah, I think there was definitely an effect that Game Changers had. When I remember how the discussion was before Game Changers, it was basically that people would say, well, it's impossible as a vegan to be as good as somebody who is, on a mixed diet. After Game Changers, even the critics of the film would say, well, it is possible, but it's not going to be better. It's going to be, it's going to be harder to do because now you have to be vegan, and it's going to be, a little bit harder to have the same result, which shows that even the critics just changed after the film, which I think is a great thing. So the film was actually attacked a lot by a lot of critics. But while some of or most of these attacks were kind of annoying because they were not really based on sound logic and sometimes really stupid, at the same time, I was learning that all these attacks showed that the attackers were actually moved by the film as well. So they developed as well, which I think that is the most important thing that we were trying to do. It's when you do, when you do a film or whatever you are doing and you try to influence people, it's not about, you can never turn the whole population into vegans with something like that. But if you can change everyone a little bit, and Game Changers did that, it changed everyone. Then I think that's huge. So I think James Wilks basically and the producers, they have done something that it has changed the world, and nobody can turn the clock back. So now we have to use that and
we can't go
build upon
back.
it.
We can't go back. And for who doesn't know the film yet, we just shared the link here in the box, the Batpap box. And you also can find the film at Netflix easier. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's there.
Netflix is the easiest way, I
everyone
guess.
can watch it. Also, someone is asking if you found pro-vegan professionals in the medical and nutritionist support for your training, or if it was a problem.
Yeah, so well, I didn't have any problems because I'm basically, because I always had to coach myself. Basically, I always kind of try to educate myself in all different areas, which includes physiology and all those things. So I never really had problems where I needed help. But there are great physiologists and doctors and researchers who are trying to educate using their their standing in their field, and a lot of them actually are in Game Changers as well. So if you watch the film, you're going to see a lot of those experts as well. But there are also, on top of that, there's a huge community, and I think these people are really, really important as well, because a lot of physiologists, most people don't know that if you study medicine, you're not really getting a lot of education on nutrition. So a lot of the doctors don't really have the level of education on nutrition that they should have, because a lot of the problems that we see in the population are actually treatable, or at least improvable by lifestyle changes. Yeah, prevent, like a lot of cancer, a lot of diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, all these different areas. There is a lot you can prevent by just having a better diet, and those plant-based experts are really doing a great job in that field, and to trying to basically get the research as well on a different level, and on an updated kind of state.
Yeah, and it legitimates a lot our message. So we have one last question, and I think it's a good one to finish our conversation. How do you think we should approach athletes and possibly clubs to help to introduce a more plant-based diets? We advocates, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's hard to say there is no perfect way, basically, because every human is a little bit different. So for every human, you need kind of a different approach. But what I'm always trying to do is, I'm basically trying to give people information, and my idea is that I'm just opening a door for them, and I can't force anyone to go through that door. So I'm not trying, and it's basically, I'm trying to pull them with the with being open, and giving them that information. If you try to push people, in my view, what's going to happen in a lot of cases is that people kind of push back, and they don't want to get have anything forced on them. So I'm really trying to more pull them by just opening up, and just giving them basically my information. And I think that's maybe the most efficient thing, at least from my position. But it depends, of course, on the way of activism that you do. Like if somebody is doing direct action, or doing activism of a different kind, it can be efficient to do it in a different way. What I really try to say is, there is a whole toolbox of different approaches, and my approach is just one of those tools. Depending on what you do as a form of activism, it could be other approaches who are in that case maybe better than my approach, but I'm just trying to be as open as possible.
Yeah, but we have some data about it, and I think you're not wrong at all, because we had Nick Cooney here today, and he has this amazing work with real data, and we know that if we push people, if we demand too much, if we make this pressure, we can turn them off. And if we lead by the example, it's your case.
Yeah.
We have the example, so we are not demanding anything, but people then get inspired, and they will make their way, of course. Oh, and we did 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Okay. So I did it the way that you asked me. You asked me to forget time. I forgot time.
Yeah. I love to forget about time, and we still have 30 participants inside the room. Whoa! Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone who listened, and yeah. Thanks. Thanks for for being here. And thanks to you guys for setting this up and giving me the opportunity to speak to everyone.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for all this work, for your impressive story of life that it's a story to share. It's a game changer, your story too. Okay, Patrik, thank you so much. If you want to stay in the room just for one more minute, so we say goodbye, I'm going to thank to everyone in Portuguese. Okay. It's always difficult to come back. You know, you also have two languages.
Yeah.
Well, bom, obrigada, muito obrigada por estarem connosco neste serão de sábado. Não, para mim não podia haver um serão de sábado mais bem passado, já que não se pode sair, não se pode fazer nada. Temos o Patrik diretamente da Alemanha a falar connosco, a partilhar esta história impressionante de vida, que é de facto um exemplo, e todos estes trabalhos que ele está a fazer, portanto, acabou por transformar a sua atividade profissional na concretização de um sonho de criança, e os animais têm beneficiado tremendamente de todos estes trabalhos. Podem encontrar, seguir o trabalho dele nas redes sociais, Vegan BDS, The Rebellion, Game Changers. Nós vamos publicar, podemos depois pôr os links também no evento, para ficarem lá registados para o futuro. Vamos com certeza estar atentos também ao Earthraiser, e quando vier nós vamos também partilhar, vamos estar, we will be paying attention. And não, e obrigada por terem estado connosco o dia todo, se foi caso disso. O dia do festival começou hoje para nós às 11 da manhã, com um workshop e grande almoço, almoçamos todos juntos. Fica o convite para amanhã. Amanhã encontramos-nos também às 11 da manhã para fazermos um workshop. Encontram o link no evento da Gabriela Oliveira. Portanto, a Gabriela traz-nos uma proposta com entrada, almoço e sobremesa. Vamos confeccionar juntos, vamos pôr o país a almoçar junto, e depois, na parte da tarde, às 2 da tarde, voltamos a fazer assim uma maratona de palestras de temas muito relevantes. Eu estou a falar rapidamente porque ainda são muitas informações, mas não percam, porque às 2 da tarde